I'm Jose Duarte. I'm a designer. I'm a founder and director of EasyDataViz. We are based in Bogotá, and what we do since 2009 or 2010 was to explore the relationship between data and people uh, from a playful analog and participatory approach. We have done lots of projects in the past 18 years. This is one of them. This is a very early project we did in 2009. And we have done lots of interventions in public space because it's part of what our essence to work with people to make data close to people using a public space. So let's talk about hope. So to start to talk about hope, let me start talking about a thing that happened here in Latin America. That the year was 2019, and start a huge mobilization in social mobilization in Chile that was contagious, and other countries all around South America start to mobilize um, in their countries. Here in Colombia, I'm based in Colombia, as I told you. There was like 6 months of protests and mobilizations, and some of them were very violent in some cases. So for us, it was very important because we are very curious about these kind of phenomenons. Try to understand why people was mobilizing, why people was going to the streets to say what they wanted. And so we did a couple of interventions in public space. This was one of the first one. We did a small card, um, and we start to ask to the people about the motivations, the fears they had behind the mobilization. So this was a very a simple intervention, and here we start to understand what was happening behind. Then we did a second intervention. This one was also very simple. We start to ask to the people about if they feel if they feel optimistic or pessimistic about their future. So we ask if they see the glass empty, half empty, or half full, and then we have a lot of conversations with the people about how they see the future, if they feel optimistic or pessimistic. And at the end, this was a project that we did in collaboration with a couple of companies here in not only in Colombia, but in Latin America. We went out for 6 months in many cities all around Latin America. I think it was like 10, something like, I don't know, 10 or 8 cities, something like that, to talk to the people about that, about the future. If you feel optimistic or pessimistic, trying to inviting them to imagine the world in 2030. That was 10 years in advance. So what we did was to go out, talk to the people. We had something like 2,000 conversations. So we designed some participatory experiences to collect perceptions of the people about this. We talk with all kinds of people in many categories. For example, if you feel optimistic or pessimistic about finance or social issues or health, that kind of stuff. We even did workshops in many cities just to really understand the motivations and the feeling of people about their future. Um, and this is what we found. So let me show you what we found with that process. So okay, so let me show you what we found when we ask people about the world in 2030. Remember that we asked that question in 2020. So 10 years, 5 years before from now. So this person that I'm drawing here represents all the people we talked to. Remember, almost 2,000 interviews, conversations in Latin America. First thing, most of the people were sad, frustrated, for example, maybe hungry, and definitely they were hopeless about their future, about the world, the future of the world. And the main reason was they were, or they feel they were unable to imagine the future. So the word imagination was very important here. Because if you can't imagine a different future, you can't build a different future. You can create a different future, and you can change your present. So this was a very important thing to understand, that the pain that people have, that was they feel unable to imagine a better future for them. So why they feel like this? So there are a lot of reasons that we found in that study, but let me show you 4 reasons. The first one was it's hard to people to imagine the future because it's noisy, it's not clear, it's too far. It's difficult to think, what are you going to do the next hour? Now imagine if I ask you about the future in 10 years. So that was the first part. The second part that I find out very interesting is that most of the people was optimistic about their personal or individual future. For example, if I ask you about yourself or your family in 10 years, probably you are going to ask, we are going to be better. But when we ask about not the personal future, but the collective future, for example, if I ask about your city or your country, people usually answer as a pessimistic answer. No, we are going to, we are now bad. The scenario is not good, so the future is going to be worse, something like that. So that was the second insight of that process. The third one was something like, it's difficult for the people to imagine a better future because they don't even understand their present, their today. So if I can understand the world where I'm living today, it's too hard to understand the world in 10 years. And the fourth thing was maybe something like related with agency. So people feel that they couldn't change the future. It's not possible for them as individuals to change their own future. So this is a thing for agency. People felt they didn't have agency, and felt how do you say this, powerless. Now, how is this related with data? That is an important question here. It's because, let me draw here data. It's because with data, we can help people to get a clearer image of the future, and really see the possibilities. But to go there, you have to transit a path from help them to see the present. So this is a question for access. For example, here in Colombia, half of the population have no direct access to internet. So this is a big problem, because if you want to share data with other people, at least in Colombia, and you use only digital channels, half of the population probably can't access that information. So this is a very important thing to discuss as a design and visualization community. What it means to really help people to see the data, to understand better and see clearer the future of the world. The second thing was to understand, the second part of the path, understand, help to the people to understand, to really understand their context, their world, their present. It's not enough to give to the people the data, to bring data in books and videos and data visualizations. I think it's really important to try to make sure to take an additional step to make sure that people is really understanding the data. I have tons of examples of this, but it's something like, it's different that you give to the people data about inflation, for example, and a different thing is that you really are sure that people are understanding the implications of inflation or the meaning of the concept of inflation. So the thing here is about literacy. And the last step of this path, I think it could be about agency. And agency is making sure that people are not just seeing the data or understanding the data, but they know what to do with the data, and they share the data with their communities, and they work with the data with the communities, and they imagine possibilities, trying to playing with the data. So this is about trust. This is about share data. This is about understand why the data make me powerful, and why can I take or make decisions with data. So when you travel or you walk this path, you help people first imagine the possibilities, see the possibilities, understand the possibilities, feel that they can change the future, and then imagine a different scenario. And then we get hope. Hope is at the end of this. You only can have hope if you are able to imagine a different future, and data can help us to do that. So what is our responsibility as visualizators or designers or data communicators? I think it's like a call to action, I guess, an invitation to our community to try to understand data not as mirrors that show us the picture of today, but try to understand data as doors that show us the possibilities of the future. So let me show you with an example what I mean when I say this. A couple of years ago, we worked in a book with a president here in Colombia that was called An Optimistic Message to the World. And part of the book that was inspired in part with Steven Pinker was this. This was the first question in the book. Would you think Colombia, we are now better in Colombia than 30 years ago? And the people answered yes or no. And then the book was about to confirm and show you that maybe your answer is right, or show you that you are wrong. And what we found is that usually people, for example, in this example, that because the book was the first chapter was about perception. So when we ask about if people think that the fight to poverty is getting worse, most of the people in Colombia felt that way. 72% are pessimists about getting better about poverty. But when you go to the data show you a different path. In that year, that was 2020, something like that, 2019, in this case 2018, the poverty rate was 27%, and that's a very high poverty, of course. But the thing here is that, and this is the challenge here, is that if you only see that data, you are seeing a mirror of that moment. But the real challenge is to try to find the path, because if you find the path, you may see that in 2000, for example, the poverty was 55%. So we reduced the poverty in a half, more than a half. And why is that important? And why is that important for hope? Because if you see the data here, 27%, you are seeing the picture. This is the mirror that I told you. But if you can see this data, you maybe can see the projection, the possibilities here. This is possible. We can do that because we did this before. So this is the first thing. It's hope here. We can get here or here. This is the first thing. But the second thing is that you can understand the things you did here, what actions you did here that reduce poverty, and you can replicate this in here to get here. So hope and see the data as doors is not only about speculation. It's more about find the actions and make sure to replicate that actions to make sure that you get there where you really want to be. So the power of data here is that allow us to imagine a better future, of course, give us tool to knowledge, agency, and eventually even change our reality. I know that it seems that as a huge purpose, but it's possible. When you transit the path and finally see the data not only as mirrors as that present you the present that usually is not good or sometimes is not good, but you can see as a door, as a possibilities, as a possibility of the future, then you see hope. So to close my intervention, let me show you a project that we did a couple of months ago. We did an sculptures that represent that idea. As you can see here, these sculptures have two pieces. So the first one, for example, represent the poverty in Colombia in 2000, the year 2000, and the second circle represent the poverty in Colombia in 2020, 20 years later. And we did the same exercise using different data to show as a gift to give to our clients, our collaborators, an example of how Colombia and the world is getting better. It's a reminder, a daily reminder. Finally, sometimes, because I show you the example of the book, but I would like to show you a very common example. I talked to you about inflation. So this was an intervention we did in public space for the past year. We did like 20 of those interventions in different places around the country, and this was an intent to make people not just understand the concept of inflation, but try to make a better use of their money using the data. So they get hope because they can save money. So this was an intervention with that purpose. Here, for example, what I trying to say here is in that installation of inflation, first we give to the people data. Then we make sure people really understand the data we give them. So this is literacy. Then we show you how can they use the data we gave them about inflation. So, for example, how can they make decisions in the shopping, and then they can imagine a strategy to save money, and then they have hope. So, as you can see in an example, a simple example of this one, even in a simple example as this one, people can feel hope when share and really understand data. And that's it. Thank you.